So in meditation, he talks about 27 and 28. He says, shutting out external contacts and fixing the gaze as though between the eyebrows, equalizing the flow of incoming and outgoing breath in the nostrils. Having the senses, mind, and intellect controlled with liberation as the goal. The sage, free from desire, anger, and fear, is verily liberated forever. So 27 gives the, very briefly, gives the procedural details. So equalizing the flow of incoming, outgoing breath through the nostrils. So basically he's talking about, you sit in a quiet position, in a quiet time, undisturbed. The equalization of breath in the nostrils it's a practical aspect of the sadhana, of the meditation, but it's also symbolic in the sense that it becomes conducive for mental equanimity. Ingoing and outgoing breaths are equal, they're balanced. There's a relaxed flow of breath. So he's talking about bringing the body into a state that is conducive for the practice of meditation. So you sit comfortably, recline on your bed and meditate. You've got to be alert, upright, ready, but not tense. So when the breath is flowing equally in and out, it's relaxed, it's natural, but at the same time, it's controlled and directed. When you're asleep, there's no control over the breath. It's just doing what it's doing. Or in fact, normally, it's sitting watching a movie, your breath just, it's relaxed and natural, but there's no conscious awareness. The breath is natural, relaxed, and consciously directed. Shutting out external contacts. So that's closing the eyes, obviously, but it's also turning the attention within. Right? So the attention is now no longer out on the external world. So the idea is that it's only an introvert or an introverted mind that can meditate. So again, you've got to remember that this is the culmination of a long period of practice of an introverted attitude in life, or an introverted direction of attention. It's not that we're extroverted for 18 or 16 hours a day and then we sit in meditation for 20 minutes, we go introverted. A person naturally becomes meditative when their attention has been introvertedly directed over a long period of time. All right. So if you want to, you think about something like slowing a vehicle down and backing it up. You don't go from going 40 miles an hour forward to suddenly going backwards. You take your foot off the accelerator first. Then apply the brake gently. Come to a stop. Then put it into reverse. Then move backwards. So it's not. So if your mind is going 60 miles an hour out into the external world, you try and sit and meditate. It's exactly like trying to jam it into reverse. So you've got to spend years taking your foot off the accelerator. Stop pursuing desires at least. Then spend a few more years placing your foot on the brake, self-control. Then you come to a stop. Then you can turn the attention within. Then that sort of idea. So you're shutting out external contacts means that you're not preoccupied with anything that the world can offer. So again, it's not only practical, but it's also symbolic, and it's talking about the long-term practice. And then he says, fixing the gaze as though between the eyebrows. The idea here is that this is conducive for a sense of devotion. If you ever see pictures of saints, for example, in the Christian theology, they're looking up. So there's a sense of looking up towards the higher. We talk about higher values. We're talking about devotion as an emotion of love that flows to the higher. So it's a recognition of something above us. Father in heaven is where? Up there. Where's hell? Down there. Symbolic for it's a higher. When it talks about keeping the mind aloft in meditation. So that's the idea of fixing the gaze between the eyebrows. Again, it's conducive for a feeling of devotion, which is essential for the practice. And then again in 28, he reiterates the same material that we covered previously. Having the senses, mind, and intellect controlled, with liberation as the goal, the sage, free from desire, anger, and fear, is verily liberated forever. So this is talking about in meditation now. The senses, mind, and intellect are all perfectly controlled. Liberation as the goal. So everything is flowing. All the thought flow is just towards that single goal of liberation. In meditation, free from desire, anger, and fear, the final few desires that are remaining are completely raised off. Right? They're uprooted, they're burned to ashes, whatever sort of symbol you want to use. As a result, liberated forever. So again, the whole idea of bondage is that bondage is a function of desire. Where we are caught up with desire, where we have a desire for something, we are bound. Right? Think of extreme examples. The addict. The addict has no control, no freedom whatsoever to say no to the object of addiction. When the desire wants it, the desire gets it. I'm not in control anymore. The desire is in control. I just go along for the ride. I'm bound. All right? And so we're all in the same boat. It's just a matter of degree, and it's a matter of different objects of addiction.
Compulsion.
Yeah, a compulsion. And so you may be addicted to an object, but because there's a social acceptance of it, you don't get called an addict, or because it doesn't completely destroy you physically, or because it doesn't completely ruin you financially, you don't notice. But we can be addicted to something and relatively functioning still in the world. The idea again is that the object differs and the degree of bondage differs. The sage, the self-realized soul, in meditation removes those last traces of bondage, the last traces of desire, even the desire to be self-realized, gone. That's also a desire. The desire to be self-realized will keep you from being self-realized. So that desire also has to be transcended. There's a story which is, I've heard attributed to the Buddhist tradition. And there's one student who was meditating and just couldn't quite cross that final boundary to achieve self-realization. Complaining to his teacher, and the teacher said, oh no, there's no self-realization. That whole thing is just a story to get people motivated to act. Sorry, yeah, I thought you knew. No. Self doesn't exist. Bang, immediately the student became self-realized. Because in that moment, with the advice of the teacher, the desire to achieve the thing disappeared because there was a recognition it doesn't even exist. Oh, okay, bang. That was the only desire remaining. The teacher, as it were, took the desire away, and bang, he crossed the boundary. So even the desire for self-realization is a bondage. But you've got to get to that level of bondage before you can take that desire away. You can't, you've got to walk before you try to run. So, you see this sort of, from a much more relative perspective, you see this kind of false renunciation occasionally. The idea that I don't have a person who's highly evolved doesn't have desires for relationships and doesn't have desires for material gain in the external world. And so a person who's at a relatively low level of development thinks, fantastic, I don't need to get into relationships. I'll stay a bachelor. I don't need to get a job. I'm going to give up all that. He hasn't achieved a level of development where he can give that up. You've got to get the desire, then you've got to achieve a point where you can recognize the desire before you overcome it. It's just because there's some half-baked ideas as to what liberation is and what practice is. He pretends, it gets this false sense of renunciation. I'll give it up. He hasn't even grown into that level yet, let alone being able to give it up. And so it's easy for that to happen, and all we're doing is suppressing ourselves. So there is the desire there, but the person refuses to accept it and refuses to face it and refuses to go through the obligations of getting married and start working and start a job. And those become the person's obligations. Because the desires are there, he has to go through them. And through that process, renounce